Hey everybody, I'd like to introduce to you today the Kodak Retina 3C, and that's 3 with a capital or big C. This is a highly coveted vintage camera. I'm going to review with you all the features of this hand-me-down that I got from a relative who knew my fascination with photography, and I had used 35mm film cameras in the past. So this one is a real treat, and we're going to go through the entire camera. A lot of people are showing interest these days in going back to regular traditional 35mm film, and this is a great camera to get that vintage style photo again, and also to learn the basics of photography. And that's what we're going to go over with this, because I believe many people now, with the convenience of point and shoot, don't remember what it was like to set up a shot, what it's like to conserve your film, because you only have so much on a reel and it's expensive to waste film and develop it, and also to understand lighting and what you have to prioritize when you're shooting different subjects. So let's get started. I'm going to remove this bottom case here, and I'll break this video up into a few segments just for convenience of editing. But the first thing we'll do is remove the bottom. I don't have the outer part. I believe it used to click in here and then go over. I do not have that. But the camera itself is quite well protected otherwise with this front cover. So it should be fairly easy to keep in good shape. Okay. So a quick look, Retina 3C, that's the serial number. So it's one of the later ones, closer to the mid to late 60s, I believe. And it's Kodak Retina camera, still works. I'm gonna go through the mechanism with you and show you, but let's leave this here for now. I'm going to pause the video and then we'll start reviewing each part. Okay, so those of you who are unfamiliar with 35mm cameras, essentially you have to load film in them. So we're going to start with that process. This here is the winding to get the shutter reset, so we'll get into that in a moment. But just to get into this, to load film, there's a little lever here. You flip over to expose the small button. When you press it, the bottom or the back of the camera opens up, and that's the internals where you load your film. Okay, I don't have any film on me now. If I did, I would simulate loading it up. This is the film tension reel here. So let me just explain how that works. We open up here, pops open. Okay. Essentially, you get a cartridge of film, and you pull out the end of the film and you find in here a notch. Okay, if you look carefully there's a small notch in this spool and a little plastic thing sticking up there. And what you do is you'd feed the end of the film into here and have that little tiny plastic barb that's sticking up grab onto one of the teeth in the film. The film has these holes along the top and bottom, and that's what helps to advance the film, because it goes into these little gears here. And so you get it onto here, and this thing will advance together and pull the film with the spool. So once you load it on this end, you slide your cartridge of film across here and you load it into this part, and then you push this down into it. So you have now your film in this section. It's lined up across here and into there, and obviously this part of your film, it has been exposed because you're doing this in light, so that's wasted film. But whatever is left in your cartridge is good to go, and as long as you don't expose it, you're going to be able to take pictures on it. So you then close the camera and you're ready to start. Now this here is what sets the size of your film, like the length, how many frames you have. You can get shots that are 30, 25, 4, 24, 36, something like that. So to reset the counter here, you hold down this button and you press this button here to move it around. Now this will advance, or count down, I should say, to 0. And then if you have a 35 shots in your film, you'll leave it there. And now when you take pictures, it'll just count down to 0. If you don't have that, maybe you have a 24 film, then you would put it, let's say here, okay? Or if you have a 20 shot film, you'd put it there. But that's essentially how you set that up. The only other thing you need to do is set what sensitivity your film is, and that'll come in later handy when you try to set up your shots. There's a thing called sensitivity on your film, which is measured in ASA or DIN. And so the higher the number, the more sensitive your film. Usually it results in better shots at night, but more grainy. So you can go up to ASA, 400, 300, something like that. Or you can do 150, 100. And this lever here essentially is just a wheel to let you turn a little calculator, in a sense, to the appropriate ASA. And DIN is just another standard. And to remember what film you put in your camera, you can do the same thing. On your rewind wheel here, you can turn this little line right there to whatever the DIN is. Now, you don't need to do that. It doesn't actually do anything to the actual camera setting. It's just to remind you what film is in there. I'm going to pretend we have 320 ASA film, let's say. Okay, just for example. And the DIN is 27. And if I really want to be accurate here, I can move that over to 27. But again, this doesn't do anything. It's just a reminder of what film's in here. Other camera versions of this have another indicator on the wheel that shows whether it's a color film or a non-color film. So you can basically, and you can see actually here, the DIN, and then you can see it says infrared. So if you use infrared film and you don't remember that you put that in there, you can line that up there. And this is color Kunstlicht and color Tageslicht. I have no idea what that means, but this is just a little wheel to remember. That's all it is. Okay, I'll just leave it there because it doesn't matter. Okay, so we have our film loaded. This is protected here. You're not opening this again. And you have set this to 36, meaning you put a film in here that has 36 picture total. And you've set up your wheel here to remind you what film sensitivity you have. So now you're ready to open up the camera and take a picture. So this little lever right there, this doesn't open normally. You push that in or out actually, and then this comes out and you end up with your lens. And this camera, actually the shutter is the lens. It opens and closes within the lens. So there's a lot of levers and numbers and different things here. We're going to try to go over what all these mean. And again, some basic photography instruction will help to explain what exactly you're trying to do with this thing. So you're now ready to take a picture. What do you do first? Okay, first of all, I just wanted you to see right here, there's this little arrow that's moving up and down. I'm going to zoom in for a second. You see that right there? If I cover this window here, the light, that arrow drops down, and if I let go, it pops up. And what you're looking at there is essentially a light meter. This window here contains a selenium cell, which is a batteryless type of light sensor, and that captures light from the surrounding and tells you how much light there is. So the reason for that is you have to set your camera up to capture the right amount of light to expose your film. And there are two things that you can use to change the amount of light that enters the camera. One is the size of the hole in here, okay? There are different size holes. Now I'm gonna just show you a couple things here, just so you understand what's going on. There's something called an iris, and to do that, I need to just basically put this on bulb there so you can see, and we'll set the hole to different sizes. Okay, so let's try. I'm gonna just show you as an example, okay? I'm gonna open up the shutter and you see a big hole there, okay? Now, I'm not sure if I can do this while it's open, but I'll try. If I play around with this knob here, there you go. That right there is the f-stop, okay, or aperture. And that controls the amount of light going in. If it's really, really tiny like that, and we'll discuss why you would choose that later, it doesn't let much light in. So then you open it up more, you'll get more light in. If you open it up even more, you'll get more light in. But it's also dependent on time. So with a small hole, you need more time to let the same amount of light in. With a bigger hole, you need less time to let the same amount of light in. And what this indicator right here does is it tells you the relationship between the time you need and the size of the hole, okay? So when you take a picture, you're using this knob here to turn until you line up with the light that's in your environment. Let's say right now in this room, the light is showing there. And that arrow is lining up with roughly about, let's say 12, okay? What you'll notice here on the bottom of the lens is a bunch of numbers that essentially are the same as what you see up here. It ranges from 2 to 18 in red, you see, it goes around like this. And we know that in our room right now, 12 is the number that corresponds to the light level. So if we move this to 12, you press this little knob here and you move this to 12. Now I can't move it all the way. Let's see, why not? 12, okay. I'm on 12 there, and you can do like half as well here. So there's 12, okay? At this point, on this side of the camera, you'll notice some interesting things. You have locked two settings. The numbers on the black indicate the size of the hole, the f-stop, and the number on the white ring or silver ring here, the black numbers, represent the speed. And that little dot is what you're currently shooting at. So let's zoom in here for a second, okay? With a small hole, but so the interesting thing is the bigger the number of f, the smaller the hole. So it's backwards, but just so you understand, 2.8, 4 is a smaller hole, 5 is even smaller hole, 8 is even smaller, 11, 16, and 22 is the smallest hole. As you go smaller in size of the hole, the bottom number, which is the seconds, 1 over that number, is the time. So with a big hole, you're 1 over 500. That's a very quick time. If you go a hole size 8, which is bigger, you're only 1/60th of a second. And if you make your hole really tiny, 22, you have to be 1/8. So you're going in longer time this way, right? 1/500th of a second is shorter. 1/8 of a second is much longer than 1/500th of a second. So as you increase your time this way, because your hole is getting smaller also. So that locks basically these two settings, ensuring that the same amount of light is entering the camera, no matter which you choose. All you're doing is just balancing the two features, the two properties. You're balancing the size of the hole to the time that you need that light to enter. All right. So I know that was a lot to basically digest, but just for rudimentary purposes of taking a picture, again, you're figuring out your light level. This wheel is important because as you turn this, that triangle points to a different number. So for example, if you have the film that I was talking about before, where we were getting this onto 12, hold on, for this room, if I can just turn this, it would be nice. They should have put another button on the other side. Anyway, for this ASA of, let's say, that's a little bit under 320, that's a fairly sensitive film. If my film was really less sensitive, so let's say 20, that's a really low sensitivity, my arrow now shoots up to 8. So I would have to move this to 8 for this room. And you'll notice now that my settings have changed. I now have 2 lining up with 60. Because even with the f-stop, the hole opened fully, that's the 2 setting. Remember, the smaller number is the bigger hole. With an f-stop of 2, I need now 1/60th of a second to capture the same amount of light needed to get the proper exposure, because my film is less sensitive. If my film was ASA 320, this arrow would be over at 12 for the same room. Okay, it would be over here somewhere. Or let's just make it 14 or 15. Let's say I'm at 1300. So I'm very, very sensitive film. Okay, so remember, biggest hole, I need 1/60th of a second. If I'm now using, that's for the very insensitive film. If I now have extremely sensitive film, and I'm at 15 here now, according to this reading, look what happens when I change this to 2. I can't even go to 2. It would have to be, like very, very quick shot. I can only go to 8. And even that at 1/500th is capturing too much light for this, too much light for this film, because it's so much more sensitive. So the whole purpose of this wheel is just a calculator. All it does is it tells you for your film what kind of ratio or relationship is required between your f-stop and your shutter speed. Okay, so those are the basics basically of setting up your shot. Now, once you've figured out your lighting, and we'll go back to the 12 because that was a nice middle number there. Okay, so we were here, there, we were at ASA around 2, just a little bit under 300, let's say. Okay, we now have the lens set up in the right relationship, but we can still choose. You can choose a wide open hole, or you can choose a small hole, okay? It really depends on what you want to do. So you can have f-stop of 2 at 1/500th of a second, or you can have an f-stop of 22, which is a tiny hole, at 1/4 of a second, which is actually quite slow, okay? Now, why would you choose different combinations? We'll get into that in the next segment of this video. Okay, so let's review. We've now set our lever here to the appropriate number according to the light in this room. Let's pretend it's 11, just for simplicity's sake. I'll just move this to 11 here. Okay, so whatever ASA film we're using there, 160 or something, close to that, this arrow points at 11 because in this room, I line this up with the amount of light arrow there. And now we have a relationship we've established, 11, and it's locked, essentially, this ring outside with this ring on the inside. So the top ring, again, is the f-stop, how big the hole is, and the bottom ring is the amount of time the hole stays open for the picture. So a big hole, which is f-stop 2, has to be open very short time, 1/500th of a second, and a very, very tiny hole, f22, has to be open longer, 1/4 of a second, to allow the same light in. So I can take a well-exposed shot at all of these different combinations for this room. I can do that. It doesn't matter which one I use. However, they do make a difference in very interesting properties. One, if you have a fast-moving object like a race car or a bird or some kind of animal running, and you want a nice still image of it, you have to prioritize your shutter speed. You're going to have to do 1/500th of a second, because if you choose 1/4 of a second, it's going to be blurry. Let's look at 1/4 of a second on this camera and see how long that takes. Okay, watch this. You could see that, right? That was pretty slow. In that time, okay, I'm moving my hand like this. You see how blurry it is? In that time, definitely the object would have moved. So sure, you could choose that for a running horse or some other animal, right? But it's going to look blurry. I don't want it to be blurry, so I'm going to choose the fastest speed I can. 1/500th. Let's see what that looks like. You couldn't even see it. I'm going to do it again. Imperceivable, right? Do it again. Looks like it didn't even do anything. Let's choose something a little slower, 1/30th or so. Oh, you can kind of see it there. It's for a split second, right? Let's go to 250. Very difficult to see, but there was something. Very simple, okay? At 500th, you can't see anything, okay? And you can go, in this particular example, for this light, 1/4 is the lowest you can go. That's allowable by the camera. I mean, you could push it beyond, but the exposure will be off. Okay, that's again 1/4 of a second. So if you're shooting something you need to have a very, very crisp picture of that's moving, you're gonna wanna use this higher setting, but it comes at a trade-off because your hole too is going to be very, very large. The aperture is going to be very open, very, very open. It won't be a tiny hole. And that affects your focus or depth of field. Now, what do I mean about depth of field? Well, certain objects, you notice that even with my iPhone that I'm filming now, if I'm here and my camera is blurry right now in the background, do you see that? Okay. Now it's in focus. My finger's in focus, but now the camera is blurry. And that's because this phone has a lens, but it has an aperture that's pretty open, and it affects the depth of field. If you want both my finger and this camera to be in focus, you can make the hole in the camera, the f-stop, all the way down to a tiny, 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 little tiny hole. And that will make both of them in focus. That's when you want to take pictures and you want something that's in the background. Let's say you're taking a mountain scene and you want to take a picture of a flower, and you want the mountain behind the flower to be all in focus. You want the flower to be in focus and the little bush behind it and the mountain all the way at the other side of the valley all in focus. Well, you can't have your f-stop at 2. That will not allow it to all be in focus, because if you look here on the lens, you'll notice something. Have a look here on this knob. This is the focusing knob right here. This thing that goes in and out focuses the camera, okay? It's in meters, that's what the M is. You can see 1 meter, 0.9, whatever. Once you've set up your shot, whatever it happens to be, okay? Remember, we had it to, 11 or something? Just to make it easy. We had a choice between a big opening, f-stop 2, and a quick shutter, 1/500th, or we could have a small opening, but a slow shutter, 1/4 seconds, or 1/4 of a second. We said that for fast-moving object, we want to have 1/500th of a second or something in that range, which will freeze the image quicker, and you won't see the blur. But you'll be forced to keep your f open at 2, which is a very large hole. If you look at this here on the focus ring, and let's say you're shooting something that's 4 meters away. So I'm lining up the 4. I'm focusing on something 4 meters away. Notice the 2s on each side of this darker line right there. That indicates that only stuff that's 3.5 meters away and about 5 meters away will be in focus. Anything beyond that, let's say it's 3, 2.5, 2 meters, it will be blurry. And let's say 6 meters, 10, 20 meters away will be blurry. So you'll notice, because the F is a 2, only a very narrow portion of your field, of your depth, will be in focus, okay? The more you close that hole up, and that's why pinhole cameras have the tiniest hole. They're even a smaller hole than f/22, f-stop 22, right? That's like f/50, f/100, whatever. But they don't take in a lot of light, because a tiny hole allows almost no light through, so you have to go much longer. But look now at your range. If I put it at f/22 and I focus on something 4 meters away, it's going to be in focus even if it's 1.5 meters away or all the way over here, which is past infinity. That's what that line is over there. That's the infinity mark, you see? Right there. So the bigger the F number, which means the smaller the hole, the more of your field will be in focus. So I'll be able to focus on my finger, on the camera, and the mountain across the valley, and I'll have no problems. But what is the trade-off? Now you have another trade-off, and that is your shutter speed. You want more in focus, your shutter speed is going to go down, so you're going to lose that freeze action on subjects that are moving. So that horse galloping is not going to look as crisp. It might be fuzzy, but you'll get it in focus at least, even with the foreground. So you have to set up your shot depending on what you want your composition to look like. That's the whole point of this. You have trade-offs. And some of these can be compensated for depending on what kind of scene you're shooting by choosing different film. So you can get different ranges that work. But that's the beauty of using a fully manual camera, because you have to decide all of this. Okay, so we're gonna take a look through the actual viewfinder. Now there's the viewfinder, and what you can see here is a display. I'm gonna try to line it up. And you'll notice at the bottom, it says 80, 50, and 35. Now that's depending on the type of lens you have on the camera. An 80mm lens is a telephoto, and so it's gonna be the inner ring there, right? This inner box. The 50 is gonna be what I have on this camera right now, and that's gonna fit into that box. And a wider angle lens, which is 35, is gonna fit around the outer box here. Now you'll notice, sorry, I'm trying to line it up again. You'll notice that there's this sort of whitish or brighter circle in the middle there, okay? And sorry, there we go. And you'll notice right now when I overlap that little white circle over the tissue box, it appears fuzzy or duplicated. So let's zoom in here, okay, and try this out. Okay, there. You see how the writing is all garbled? I'm gonna focus the camera. Okay, hold on. Here we go, I'm focusing it. At least I'm trying to. I can't find the knob on the camera, hold on. It's right over here, okay. Let's try that again. Okay, I'm gonna move it, and notice right there, the writing has become clear. Okay, let's zoom in. Okay, I'm moving this knob, and you can see it's duplicating the writing. And as I move it, okay, we're almost there. Hold on, I'm falling out of my, there, okay, here we go. And there. There. And if I keep going, it goes, you see, it becomes fuzzy again. So I'm gonna just get this to be perfect here. Hold on, back to normal, there. That's where it should be. And if we look at the focusing ring here, what I've done was I moved this focusing up and down, and it's telling me that this tissue box is about between 1.7 and 2 meters away, which is accurate because that's exactly where that tissue box is. It's about almost a little shy of 2 meters away. So this here is a rangefinder, and basically what it does is it uses both of these two openings here. It splits the image between that and combines them. And when you focus with this knob, something bends in this one, and it essentially either becomes more parallel as it goes to infinity, or the closer you are, the more these sort of angle into each other and they overlap the image. So when you're at the right distance, they overlap because you're angled properly. So let's do that again for a second here. I'm gonna do it with the that up there. Okay, so you can see, let's zoom in. There we go. Sorry, get the camera there. Okay, so with that plug over there, yeah, you can see that it's duplicated. The more I go out this way with the focus wheel, the worse it gets, okay? And then if I start going back the other way, and we are there, okay? And that's in focus. So the rangefinder on this camera gives us the opportunity to focus a little bit better. I mean, you can always just estimate the distance as well. Sorry, there we go. You can estimate the distance, but for certain shots, you're gonna wanna use this. So that's the rangefinder. All right, so we've covered pretty much all the basics. We've loaded film into the camera by opening this thing up. We fed it into the spool. We've reeled it in. This has been tensioned. We've set our film speed. We now take pictures by figuring out the lighting, setting our lens combination to whatever number we see here, right there. That then locks the relationship between the f-stop and the shutter speed, which is basically this sort of like a teeter-totter, a balance between a bigger opening or a smaller opening, faster or slower shutter speed. That way, no matter where you are on this ring, as long as they're locked together, you've got the same amount of light entering the camera. You're just choosing different things. Either you're going for a large opening with fast time or a small opening with short time. Sorry, with a longer time. You then have to choose your scene. You want to have more in focus, you're going to have to choose a smaller f-stop, but then you're going to have a longer time, which might blur things. You want to shoot something that is fast moving and have it crisp. Sure, set up your timing so it's faster, 1/500th of a second, but then you're going to have a shorter depth of field. And this camera nicely shows you that depth of field because you have these brackets, 2, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, telling you exactly what distances you're going to have in focus pretty much for whichever you choose. So that's what that is. Now, this camera also, okay, to shoot, you just wind this like that. You take a picture by hitting the shutter here. That's it. And as each time you do that, you'll notice that the wheel, this thing goes down. See, it's a 21. It just jumped to 20, 19, 18, and so on. Remember, if you run out of, it'll freeze at 0. So if you want to reset it, you just hold this down and do that. And you can get a few more frames out of it. Just be careful not to pull your film out of your reel, out of your cassette here. What have I not covered? There are features here for the flash. MX are synchronization settings for flash, electric, or bulb. You plug in your little flash thingy here, and it slides into the boot here. Okay. And the one other thing here is V. So that's a self-timer. So let's just set this up so it's obvious. I'm going to make this open to be really big. Here, half a second. That'll be obvious. Okay. Wind up the film. And if you set this guy here, this little green thing to V, if you can see the V right there, I'm going to slide this to V, and you'll feel kind of like a grainy feeling. That's loading up a timer. And this is when you want to take a picture of yourself. You run in front of the camera, you click right here, and you can hear it. And you say cheese, and you wait about 10 seconds. And then, there, it took a picture. See? We'll do that again. So, we'll just get our hands off the camera. Oh, sorry, there. Wait, did it do it? Oh, I have to set it again. Once you wind it, you put it back to V, and then click. Then you have enough time to run to the camera, in front of the camera, I mean, and then any moment now, there it goes. It took a picture. Okay. Okay. Finally, let's get this back in focus here. Hello, camera. My iPhone's acting up here. Okay, if you want to get the camera back in to back into the into the case, this wheel here has to be all the way back to focusing on infinity. That pulls the lens in. You can see that it extends when you do that. And when you go like this, it goes all the way back. If it's not in that position, you cannot close this because you have to push these two buttons. It will not press in. As soon as you do that and it's all the way, you can press in and you can close it up. Okay. If you want to rewind your film, you pull this up to the half mark there and you hold this button down. When you press that down, it will now let you rewind, because what that does is essentially stops. Here, let me show you inside here. Pressing that button disengages this wheel so it can spin both directions, okay? If not, look, I can't pull it back, see? It'll go this way, but I can't go backwards. The minute you press this, I can now go backwards. Essentially, if you want to do double exposure for an effect, you would wind the film, take a picture, let's say. Let me just do that. Okay, now you don't want to have the thing move, so you press this down and you do that, and it will rewind, or it'll activate the, it'll get the spring mechanism for the shutter going again. It'll wind it up without advancing the film, and then you can take another picture on the same frame. So that's just another way to use the camera. There are a whole bunch of other features here. I won't go into everything, but that's the basics of using the Kodak Retina 3C. And I'm gonna have another video coming up on using another classic camera from the 70s. This is a little bit older than that, but another camera which basically follows the same principles exactly, just a little bit different way of doing it. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.